What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 112 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Steve, a momentous day.
Oh, it's finally here,
It's
Pete.
finally here. Microsoft has closed on the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. And this is, and we'll talk about why later. And if not the last time, the second to last time we should have to talk about this story. We shall see. But good God, the CMA has finally approved the deal after, I believe, 11 months now, right? It's I can't even
But
remember how long.
it was longer than that, I
8?
think.
I forget. You look it up. You look up the timeline for me here. But, the last time we updated you on this story, right? Xbox had their proposed revision to the deal, which would have Ubisoft taking over the cloud streaming rights in perpetuity for all of the games that are currently in the Activision Blizzard King library. All new games moving forward would belong to Microsoft. And the CMA had, basically took a victory lap when they addressed it. And
Ugh.
we're very happy to pat themselves on the back for being the only regulatory board that could get this concession. But it's done, right? Ubisoft's now a part of the pie. Xbox has closed the deal, a $68.7 billion deal, making it the largest in video game acquisition history and the biggest acquisition, period, since AOL's merger with Time Warner for $182 billion, which is a very old fashioned sentence.
Can you? I just cannot comprehend that that deal was AOL buying Warner and not the other way around, and it was $182 billion.
So it's really funny, and it speaks to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. Who knows? Time's meaningless anymore. But you made the comment about how like a company like Apple could come and snap up Disney or something like that, right? And like obviously Apple, Microsoft, kind of the exceptions to this rule, but otherwise, it,
Comcast did it there with NBC and
oh, sure.
Universal.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say was that I think that speaks to the volatility of the tech industry, where like a company like AOL used to be the internet. That was how you got online, and of
Yeah,
course that ended. Right? It's like
it still is for a lot of people though. Like
of course,
10% of America still uses AOL dial-up. It's mental.
wild. Probably just like people's great grandparents that have a computer in a room they don't go
Still got
on.
those
I would guess.
CDs at the supermarket, popping
Yeah.
that in. Yeah.
Um, Crazy, but yeah, it just speaks to how quickly things can change in this industry, or the broader tech industry, right? But yeah, very old fashioned sentence. So
Yeah.
did you find the timeline for me?
It was 21 months that it took.
21 months. Oh my god. Okay, so this just re-illustrates my point that time is meaningless because
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. It's been nearly 2 years.
Yeah, it was meant to be 18 months was the time limit, but they extended it,
Of
with
course.
the deal with the CMA. But yeah, 21 months since they announced their, intention to
Good God.
purchase.
Good
Yeah,
God.
pretty
That is
crazy.
insane. Well, so to give you some of the updates, right? So like we got the approval here. That was back on the 13th. Was the final acquisition. So literally, like right after we posted last week's show. But for where we're at now, the EU has decided to not re-examine the deal, so that's closed. We do still have the ongoing
Yeah, the
trial.
FTC would really like to have examined the deal ahead of time. They put out a piece on October the 10th talking about an additional complaint saying that council was not able to look at the CMA deal with Ubisoft ahead of the transaction. It's now a substantially different transaction than the original one, and so they need to open up discovery all over again and find out what's going on. So the FTC are going to draw this thing out for as long as they want.
But that they as we discussed at the end of the previous case, because they lost that first case, they're not able to stop the deal. So
But
the
it's the same case. They applied for a preliminary injunction
Oh,
to
right.
say, "You
Thank you.
cannot we don't want you to allow you to buy until we've gone through with the trial," because the trial date was set for November. The trial will go ahead in November. It will proceed in November. Um, but we'll have to wait and see what comes out. No doubt there'll be more juicy emails from the Xbox side of things.
Of
Although I think
course.
they've pretty much leaked everything they could possibly want to leak at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm interested, in what you think about it, but think I don't think that case is going to do anything to
No.
slow up this deal, right? Like,
No, me neither. I mean, the deal's close. It's gone ahead. I think it's too late now. I don't think that they'll be able to unpick it in a meaningful way. Maybe they'll be able to get a few more concessions out, but it's not like they're going to be splitting up Xbox from Microsoft and saying you have to spin it off as an individual company.
and it's just
There's
like,
there's nothing really that proved that it diminished consumer choice and
right.
competition. You know, it was. I think it was the judge, and didn't you say something that they demonstrated that it was bad for Sony, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was bad for
For
gamers and
consumers, right,
for
which is, like,
consumers. Yeah.
fair enough, right? Like, it's like, yeah, of course it's bad for their direct competitor, like, anything that they do is, though, right? Like, that's not a reason to stop, a deal. And I think, the point that you just made is where I was driving, where it's like, I don't see how if they couldn't pull it together the first time, what has changed, right? Like, what new, like, obviously, you just said, like, there are parameters of the deal that have evolved. But again, like, they involve Ubisoft owning these rights, so it actually, like, lessens the case that they were trying to make anyway, you know? The idea that, like, oh, like, Call of Duty is this insanely dominant thing, and that's gonna upend the market or whatever. It's like, all right, well, they don't even have the streaming rights to it anymore, which significantly lessens the impact of it being like, that actually is more of an incentive for them to put it on other consoles because that's how they're gonna make money, is selling copies on PlayStation, right? Like, not driving you to Game Pass. Um,
Hmm.
so I feel like there isn't really there clearly wasn't enough of an argument to sway the judge previously, and I don't know what cards they're possibly going to be able to lay out that are going to do anything. But to your point, maybe win a few more concessions. But I don't even know what you ask for at this point, right? Like, it's what else is there? If the crux of their argument was that you know Xbox owning Call of Duty is problematic, and they couldn't make that case. I I
Well,
don't know where we go from here.
they're specifically wanting to look at the Ubisoft agreement by the looks of it. So the court document said that the Ubisoft agreement is comprised of three separate contracts that together transfer the Ubisoft the rights to sell cloud-streamed versions of Activision games in the United States, the United Kingdom, and various other countries outside of the European Economic Area. Because obviously the EU deal granted basically bring your own game, you can stream it on whatever service you want, and that is still in place. So they wanted to open up discovery so that they could see what the deal was with Ubisoft and see all of that correspondence between the two of them. The judge has granted that by the looks of it. And so discovery will begin on that ahead of the court date, and we'll see if anything comes out relating to the Ubisoft deal. But I can't imagine they'll find any kind of smoking gun in there. There was no smoking gun in the last set, you know. There's no shady deals happening here. I think it's kind of all above board. And if the CMA looked at the deal and they were like, "Yeah, sure," yeah, I can't see that the FTC will find any fault with it, or at least the judge won't find any fault with it.
Yeah, and again, right? Like, we said this, or at least I remember making this point when we were moving into the CMA case, where I was like, they're not going to stop this deal, right? Like we might get a modification, we might spin off a sub company for the UK, whatever, but like the EU's already signed off on it. Now the CMA signed off on it. Like, the FTC is not going to be the thing to stop this. This the same. And granted, I know it's a new organization. There's new leadership there and everything, but like, just a few years ago, we had Disney acquire Fox, and it's like this is so far from that in magnitude that, like, it's just
I think this is the new administration, right? It's Biden's
it is
administration wanting
right.
to show that we're being serious on big business, you
Yeah,
know?
but
We're kinda knuckling down
and
on
what's been
big
the
tech.
result of that though, right? Was
Yeah.
they barked a lot, but they put together a flimsy case and they showed a lack of understanding of the industry, fundamentally. And they failed to make a strong argument, you know? And I think that that's just not it's not how you're gonna stop this, right? Because yeah, like I said, or as you just pointed out, right? Like, yeah, it's a new administration. They want to show that they're trying to be tougher on this thing, but like the legal precedent for this kind of thing, right, is that like big acquisitions do not get stopped 9 times out of 10. They
Do
just
you think
don't.
it would have been a different story if this was Sony buying them
No, I
and
don't.
to then make Call of Duty exclusive on PlayStation?
Well, I think if that's what they were trying to do, then maybe because like that was expressly not Xbox's goal. And a big part of the argument, right, that the FTC presented was, you know, bringing out Sony to be like, well, oh yeah, like they're saying that, but like they're gonna, look how much that'll hurt us, and it's like, but there was no evidence to show that that was their intent, right? There were no emails where they said, haha, we're gonna tell everybody that we won't make it exclusive, and then we will. Like they were transparent about what their intent was with the brand, and based on everything that the court could find, that was the truth, and not, you know, not PR speak, right? Not like when we danced around, oh, our Bethesda game's going to be exclusive, and Phil didn't quite answer, and then we find out, yes, they are, right? That's not what's happening here. I think if Sony was coming in trying to make the same acquisition and saying, yeah, no, we're going to make Call of Duty exclusive, and if you want to play the best, biggest, uh, shooting franchise, one of the biggest IPs in the world, you have to come to PlayStation. I think maybe that argument holds more water, right? But I think ultimately that was what was trying to be proved, and it was proved that that was not the goal, and that like
Yeah.
Xbox's vision, right, is beyond the console, and like we
Which
know
which
that,
was clear in the documents that they provided that leaked, right? And I
yeah,
think that's gonna come out in the trial in November, is that, the goal is not the box, it's beyond the box. We're looking at cloud streaming and the uptake in cloud streaming, and that's where we're kind of pushing towards.
right,
Ubisoft is kind of gonna take that over and license it back. I think the FTC just wanna make sure that Microsoft is getting the same deal as Sony, for example, and Ubisoft isn't charging Microsoft a dollar to license these games back while they're charging $1 million to Sony.
sure, right. So then, the other bit that I know a lot of people are probably asking, like, what's happening is the Bobby Kotick of it all, right? So like literally hot on the heels of this deal getting confirmed, right? Microsoft did their, the same blog post they did with Bethesda. They did their
Mm.
little victory lap of, hey, it's finally closed. All these great games are joining the family, and welcoming.
Everyone's chanting, "Boo earns, boo earns." We want
Exactly.
Bobby to stay on, yeah.
And we got the confirmation that Bobby Kotick will remain the active CEO for Activision Blizzard until the end of 2023. So, and then someone TBD will step
Mm,
in and
Sarah Bond.
replace him. I think that's an interesting theory. You threw that out in our Discord that Sarah Bond could be the one to step in. I think weirdly, I can kind of see it both ways because I think we've talked a lot about how the acquisition of Bethesda was like not super smooth from what we've learned, right? Like with Redfall, where like that kind of hands off approach didn't necessarily benefit the studios that are now under the arm and they're not getting the resources that they need. They don't have enough support from Xbox. So, like, Xbox needs more leadership like Sarah Bond, not less. And I
But I think you could put someone like her in charge as head of Activision Blizzard, and she's still a Xbox employee. She still works for Xbox. They're all under the same division.
yeah,
She reports directly to Phil in the same way that Todd reported directly to Phil.
yeah,
And I think you can then have her kind of trickle down what Phil's looking for, his vision, what Xbox is looking for,
yeah, I agree.
down to the Activision Blizzard side. And it's also nice to not have a white guy in charge over at Activision
Yeah,
with all of the troubles that they've had. Like, I would really like to see some more diversity over there.
I mentioned that on our Discord where, like, I think at the very least, you should not have a man, right? Like, I think having, um, you know, having a man in that role, and it's like, I know that this is a sensitive issue for some folks, right? But, like, I think when you have this company that has been accused of having an environment that was not only leading to like sexual harassment obviously some of the really insane shit that we heard that Bobby Kotick has said.
It was like a boys' club, you know? It was like,
That's what I was gonna say, right? Is you have this reputation for having this like boys club, like frat dorm kind of energy, and I think bringing in another white guy to be the one who's gonna come in and clean that up, right? Is like not to say that it can't be done, right? Like you and I are both white guys, and that's not how we would run things, but I think having, someone like Sarah Bond, right, who has like been instrumental in closing this deal and has been like a visible leader at Xbox and is a person that like we all recognize, I think would be a really strong message to send as Xbox to be like, we are going to be more involved with ABK and not make the same mistakes we made with Bethesda. Or I'm sorry, we'll say Take Two. Um, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong.
ZeniMax,
ZeniMax. Take Two is GTA and all that.
Rockstar, yeah, yeah.
Um, and we're not going to repeat those mistakes. We are going to be more involved, and we're going to replace, Bobby with somebody that is from Xbox and that is a proven leader and that knows the company inside and out because she just spent 21 months trying to close this deal. I think I I didn't initially think about her because of what I said before, where I feel like she seems so instrumental to Xbox that taking her out and having her focus on ABK seems, unfathomable to me, especially with the context that like Major Nelson just left. So that's like
Well,
another
and P. Hines is on his way out the door as well over
right.
at Bethesda.
So and maybe that's the move then though, right? Is that like, look, like we're rearranging things
It's
and
time
and
to
people are
freshen up, yeah.
and like Sarah has proven that she is competent, that she is a good like face, right? Like she is at the Xbox events. She is, sometimes she introduces things, sometimes she comes in halfway through, but like she gets that moment to talk and present the same way that Phil does. And I think like you can't really elevate her above where she's at Xbox.
Not without her taking over Phil's, role.
Right, which I don't think we're there.
No.
And I think you move her over to ABK, that is a increase in position for her. It's more power, it's more control, and it's more ability to show that she's she's the fucking, person to do that kind of job. And then maybe when Phil is ready to step back, then she does step up, right? And she's gone from the second highest position that you could have running, an arm of studios to being head of Xbox eventually. I think you're probably right that she will eventually be head of Xbox unless she decides she wants to step away, but I think moving her to ABK is a good way to keep her on because that's,
Mhm.
how much higher can she get at another company, right? Like
And she really understands that business. She's shown that from working on the deal. She understands the business. She understands what it's about. She understands the games. I think she
she
could
gets how to
really.
talk to the audience about the product, which is I
Mhm.
think like we were razzing Jim Ryan for that a couple weeks ago, and where it's like that's the thing he
Well,
never
and Bobby
convinced
never
you.
really did either. Like,
No, I mean
he
Bobby's
was the money man.
he's just a businessman, like
Mm.
he bought Activision Blizzard because or Activision, I guess at the time, um, because video games were a moneymaker, right? Like it's not because he is a gamer and has a passion for the industry or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think Sarah gets it. And I think having her come in and take all that knowledge and all that experience that she's had, not just working for Xbox, but becoming familiar with ABK, I think that's a really good prediction on your part. And honestly, I hope it comes to pass because I think it would be easier to find more middle management to support Phil at Xbox than to find somebody who can lead ABK. Like that's a tough role to fill, especially when the company has this like stink on it that they need to, they need to do some damage control, right? And like rebuild the image as this new positive thing. And I think
Well, I mean,
having
they've also got a lot of work to, I think, undo a lot of the stuff that was done in the last few years when it became clear that Call of Duty was the only game really propping up Activision Blizzard, and
right,
all of these studios just became Call of Duty support studios. They've got to resurrect some of the old IP, probably uncancel some projects, greenlight some new ones. They need someone in there that understands what works, what doesn't work. I think Sarah, from her position over at Xbox, can understand what works as a Game Pass game, what works as a free to play game, what will work as a full paid product on PC, because she's got that expertise from looking at the other studios in the Xbox arsenal. And I think doing that over, giving her kind of carte blanche over at Activision Blizzard while still reporting back to Phil, he can remain hands off, big picture kind of thing, which seemed to be what he wanted to do with ZeniMax. That's how he ended up with the Redfall problem. I think having someone in there from the Xbox side of things would hopefully alleviate those issues.
yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
But
Um,
I'm glad to see Bobby is leaving and he's not sticking around forever.
yeah, we knew that was happening, right? Like you knew he had to be a lame duck after a certain amount of time.
Oh yeah, big old
Uh,
golden parachute, right?
yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, and there's like there's no way around that, right? Like the dude owned the company since like 1998. Like, yeah, he was gonna see some money for it getting sold. Is what it is. I'm glad that he's gonna leave, and I think
Mhm.
it's exciting that hopefully, the people that are there, that are the boots on the ground creatives and, some of these great IP, can, you know, get away from that, and we can hopefully like forge forward with a new culture and a new vision for ABK and all the studios there. And that, we can get some good games out of it and hopefully see that become a better place to work.
Yeah,
There
I agree with that. I mean, we still got the investigation from California's civil rights department and stuff like that that's ongoing, and presumably Microsoft will have to deal with that once
Mhm.
Bobby's left. But Polygon were reporting that he's going to get at least $15 million in cash just to say goodbye, not including the money he's just made on his stocks and shares
Yeah.
in Activision
He's
Blizzard.
gonna be he's already a very rich man. He's going to walk away a very rich man for sure.
Yeah.
Is what it is, you know? Um, so there was a set of tweets I wanted to pull in, from Matt Piscatella, who is an analyst. I forget the name of the organization now, but it used to be,
Was MPD
NPD.
Group.
Yeah, I forget what their new name is, but he worked there, and I believe he's at the rebranded one now. Um,
Well, yeah, they got, they merged with Sakana
okay.
and
What's the name now?
MPD Sakana, and, MPD is part of Sakana.
Okay. Okay, great. So Matt Piscatella, known analyst, he had a couple tweets about this that I thought were worth pulling in. Just in the spirit of what we're talking about there being this new leadership and hopefully an opportunity for like a new age at ABK. And he said, as a proud Activision alum, I'm happy for current employees that this deal is finally getting done. Microsoft and Xbox seem like great places to work, and its vision of expanding the ways people can play in the future while also embracing the great games and IP of the past. I'm optimistic. Again, my own opinion, but I'm also happy for everyone at Xbox who will get to work with some of the smartest and hardest working folks in the biz, who I also have a feeling may enthusiastically embrace new leadership. All good vibes from outside looking in. So,
Yeah,
seems
which
that
is
way.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we've talked a lot about you and I and our reservations about consolidation and, generally, I'm not one to cheerlead this type of acquisition, but given what we know about Activision Blizzard, from just the top down in terms of everything that's come out during these investigations, but also just like you said, the way that they've treated their IP, the way that they've acquired these really great historic IP and then kind of let them lay dormant or revive them and then killed them off in the name of supporting Call of Duty. Like it's exciting to think that, you know, uh whatever your feelings about media consolidation, that hopefully some positive stuff can come out of this, not only just for, us as fans who maybe want to see a new Tony Hawk or want to see, more Spyro or more Crash or something like that, but also, for the actual people working there, and that they can, hopefully work at a place with a better environment and with more creative freedom, and not having to be relegated to a Call of Duty support studio, or not, being a studio that has to make a Call of Duty every other year, and like being
I
on
hope
that
so.
treadmill.
I mean, I hope we get more stuff like Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment, those smaller games that developers can just be a little bit more creative. They don't have to worry about sales as much because it's just going to be another game that gets added to Game Pass, and we can have those smaller titles. I'm curious though, was there any reason we couldn't have another Tony Hawk from some other studio? Could like Tony not just be like, "Yo, EA, I know
No,
you did
Activision
Skate
owns
before."
owns the franchise.
They own his name.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, they own that. Yeah.
They could do like he could do like Tony Hawk's Amateur
I doubt. I
Skater.
imagine that there is a non-compete clause or something, some such, right?
Yeah, most likely,
It's
which
like
is a shame.
it's like the like Ubisoft owns the Tom Clancy name, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's no
obviously
longer
he's
around.
dead, but like
Yeah,
his heirs couldn't go sell Tom Clancy's whatever to somebody else, right? Like it's like no, that's not how that works, man.
yeah.
But I
People
mean, like the thing that like that, and I'm with you. I love that. I think if those studios have ideas for games like that, I want to see them. But I'm like super excited to see like studios like Raven, right? Who's like they've been making Call of Duty since like God knows how long. But like, people forget that they used to make other really cool games. Like, um, as a as a comic book fan, the movie X-Men Origins Wolverine, terrible. The video game, awesome. Very, very
Mhm.
cool. Very cool action, like hack and slash type game. A lot of fun. And like, you know, um, they made
Come on, man. Hexen.
yeah, they made
Go
X-Men Legends, which is a game I loved a lot back in the day. Like, they used to make all kinds of they made the original Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I forgot about that. Like
Mhm.
they used to make a lot of cool other genres of games. And like I wonder if there aren't people that are still there that like would like to make a top-down action adventure game, or like a high fantasy game or something that's not Call of Duty, That's cool, man. Like that's really cool.
Even if there isn't, you can revive that brand and put out one of those the game reveals that is, "We're making Hexen again." Like, "Here's Hexen
Yeah.
4. Anyone wanna come and make it? Come along and join the studio. We're looking to hire people." And people will come along, if they've got if they drived with that franchise when they were kids or whatever, and now they're adults and they want to make games, they can go and work for them. And like other studios like Toys for Bob, the fact that Toys for Bob was making content for Call of Duty Warzone is just insane to me. Like they're the studio behind Crash and Spyro and children's games and like fun family friendly
Well, don't forget.
franchises, and then now all of a sudden they're just making games, like making stuff content for a war game.
Yeah, well, don't forget they did the same thing to the studio that made the Diablo remastered game that you really
Yeah,
like.
they did a great job on that Diablo remaster.
Oh gosh, what's their name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Like I want to say Travelers Tales, which is a
No,
different way
Traveler's
older.
Tales is a totally different company.
That's
That's
a way
TT
older
Games now.
developer, yeah, but I'm trying
Yeah,
to remember these guys. Um,
they did the Tony Hawk remake.
oh my god,
It was
what is their
Neversoft.
name? I'm sorry. This is great radio.
Vicarious Visions.
Vicarious Visions, thank you. I was like, this is gonna
Yeah,
drive me insane if I don't get there.
yeah,
Yeah,
Vicarious
they did that
Visions.
to them too, right? It's like, and they made them a Blizzard studio, and it's like, let's undo that. Let's bring back Vicarious Visions. Let's make Toys for Bob a third friggin' 3D platformer studio again, right? Like, let's make the games that they make and not force them to make first person shooter
Yeah,
content.
I'm looking at Vicarious Visions. Prior to Tony Hawk and the Insane trilogy, they hadn't really done anything other than Skylanders, which obviously fizzled out. And then prior to that was Guitar Hero. So I mean, maybe you resurrect that brand. I don't know. It was going to be interesting to see what they do because how many of these people are still around? The studio's only really as good as the people. If you can
Yeah.
bring some of those people back, then great. But if they're gone, then well, I mean that sucks. But hopefully they resurrect Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, which was apparently cancelled in 2021, and we can
No.
have that game released. Because I feel like probably
Please.
would have done really well.
It would have. The first one did really well, and people like those games more.
But it
Yeah,
didn't do well enough, you know, it didn't do billions like, Call of Duty does, and that's the
and
problem.
that's the thing, right? Is like hopefully with Xbox, like that's not the problem, right? Like they don't care about that as much because like having variety in the catalog is valuable, and they don't have these like three, like aside from like the odd thing like Super Lucky's Tale or whatever, they don't have the 3D platformers. Nobody has Tony Hawk. Like Tony Hawk is an institution if you do it right.
Yeah.
And 1 and 2, like Vicarious Visions got it right, and, like, they were not the first to try. They did that 1 and 2 remake, back on the Xbox 360 that was, like, a downloadable game, and just the feel was off, and it's like, you can't fake that. Like, that is a thing that, like, if you play Tony Hawk, if you fuck with Tony Hawk, it feels a certain way, and if it doesn't feel like that, it's just not right, and they got it, and it was like, God, I want them to make 3 and 4 and then make Underground and then make a new one. I don't need you to remake any more after that. But get me to an Underground remake and then make a new Tony Hawk. And I swear to God, there's an audience that'll show up for it. There is. And it's the same with Crash and Spyro, right? Like those games did well. They sold well, and it's like, yeah, they weren't Call of Duty, but like what is? And like you shouldn't be putting all your eggs in one basket because what happens when that bubble bursts?
Yeah, I mean, and there's no reason that these franchises have to stay in Activision Blizzard either, like, there's no reason you couldn't say, "Well, we own Tony Hawk now, we're gonna get
Somebody else
some
will.
some other Xbox studio to make it," like,
Yeah.
go give it to the Forza team and see what they can do.
Yeah, and it's like, that's cool, like, whatever, right? But, like, I feel like you had these studios that existed to make these products, and they were passionate about it, and I think if there are people that are still there that wanna do it, or, like, if you can pivot and be like, "Look, this is what this studio is again. Anybody that used to work here, come back. There's an open offer. If you don't have another job, if you wanna come back," and then do what you said. Put out an call to action to be like, "Look, we're making the next Tony Hawk. Come join the team." And, like,
Mhm.
just do that, like, cultivate that talent again. You did it once, you can do it again. We got a ton of great games out of it. And like we got a Crash 4. I would love for them to make a new Spyro game. That would be awesome. I would be so into that. So yeah, that's would be really exciting for me for sure. But anyway, we'll put a pin in that part of the conversation for now. Uh my question for you, Steve, right? So all this has happened. So that means we're getting Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass soon, right? Like
Mm.
theoretically like 2 days ago.
It should be they should already be there, I need to just turn my Xbox
Wrong!
on and check.
Wrong, Steve. Wrong. If you listen to Activision Blizzard, they're not coming until 2024. Activision Blizzard's official Twitter account uh, tweeted out, "It's awesome to see anticipation building for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 as we continue to work toward regulatory approval of the Microsoft deal. We've been getting some questions whether our upcoming and recently launched games will be available via Game Pass. While we do not have plans to put Modern Warfare 3 or Diablo 4 into Game Pass this year, once the deal closes, we expect to start working with Xbox to bring our titles to more players around the world, and we anticipate that we would begin adding games into Game Pass sometime in the course of the next year."
So this was put out 4 days before the deal closed.
Correct.
Do you think it was damage control that they're trying to get people to keep buying their games? You know, Diablo 4's just come to Steam. Do they want people to buy it there and not wait and hope that it comes to PC Game Pass?
That was my original thought. And the fact that it hasn't happened yet makes me think maybe that's not the case, right? Because
Mm.
so right after that tweet, right, there was a report from Jez Corden over at Windows Central, who this is from a tweet, and he had a whole article about it. But he said, "Our sources indicate, surprising nobody, that despite Activision's statement, you can expect to see a bunch of Activision stuff hit Xbox Game Pass as soon as the deal is finalized." Obviously, that's not come to pass, right? And, I think if you were trying to uh, you know, read the tea leaves, right? Like Bethesda's games came just 3 days after the acquisition, and it wasn't like the newest, hottest stuff, but it
No,
was
but we got the classic titles like
20 games from the
Oblivion
classic
and
line.
Morrowind,
Right.
stuff like that. Doom, I think, came.
Right. So, you know, um, that's kind of what I think a lot of people were expecting, right? And like in Jez's article, he pointed out that over the summer, Microsoft and Xbox brought back the 360 servers for a couple classic Call of Duty games that like led to these big spikes in playership. So like a lot of, the and this is Jez's words, right? The obvious assumption there is that Microsoft could be looking to include classic Call of Duty games into the service initially. Microsoft may be exploring the impacts on user behavior potentially before disrupting the premium Call of Duty machine.
It's quite possible, makes sense, right? But
Right.
I don't think, and this was the same with the Activision deal, right? With the ZeniMax deal. These companies aren't allowed to collude and make plans until the deal
Right.
goes through. Activision had to continue with its business as it was, assuming that the deal would or wouldn't go through, and their business was not putting games on Game Pass day and date. It was selling new games, full $70 games, and it seems like that's the process that they've continued doing. Because if the CMA hadn't approved this deal, it wouldn't have happened. They would have had to go back to the negotiation table or call it off or whatever. So I kind of believe the tweet at face value that it's not gonna happen yet. It's gonna happen at some point, obviously, but right now they're not ready for it. They've not prepared for it. And they've probably got deals in place with other companies that means that they can bring some of these games to Game Pass.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe that's part of it. We did get some insight from the man himself, Phil Spencer, on the official Xbox podcast, and he echoed those statements to some degree. But he did kind of give a little bit more of an explanation as to what I think ABK meant. So he said the regulatory process took so long that we weren't able to get in and work with the Activision Blizzard. Worked Paraphrasing, the man was talking, right? So there might be some bits where it sounds awkward.
Mhm.
Working with the Activision Blizzard team, I would guess he means, on that back catalog work. Now that the deal is closed, we're starting that work, but there is work. I think the Activision Twitter handle did put out something that talked about 2024, and I think that's accurate. I would love it if there was some sort of secret celebration drop that's coming in the next couple of weeks. There's not. The fact that we're not hitting day one with a bunch of games dropping into Game Pass is a little bit of a downer, but I'm very excited about the future.
I don't think Phil, if this was happening, would say any of that because he'd want to be like, "They're coming, they're gonna be there for the holiday season,
Exactly.
buy your Xbox,
You wouldn't
and play
say
them."
like he's very, very matter of fact of I would love it if that's the case. That's not the case. I believe that. What he has no incentive to lie, right? Like it's not gonna make that more exciting or whatever, like to be like, they're not coming. Just kidding. Cause then everything he says is suspect, right? And it's
Mhm.
like he needs to be careful to not lie, right? He can omit truths, he can not
Yeah,
share
like,
certain
well,
information.
there's been times when I think people would say he was lying, like
Sure,
that interview where he said that you've not heard about feature parity from us when it came to the Larian, Baldur's Gate thing.
totally. And
But
like that's the thing though, right? Is like you need to that's got to be a thing that you do sparingly, right? Where you
mhm.
where you like you need to have that trust. And I think if you are like straight up coming on the official Xbox podcast and being like, this is what happened, it's not happening, it's probably next year, and then like 2 months from now, he's like, just kidding, just wanted you to buy Modern Warfare 3 in November. It's like that's I don't know.
I mean,
I think
2024 ain't that far away anyway. It's
no,
3 months. This could drop in January, Bobby's out the door, here's a celebration drop to
yeah.
say goodbye to the man.
And there's also the thing that he does leave enough deniability in here that if they do drop stuff before the end of the year, he says, and
I
I
think
think
it's
that's
accurate.
accurate.
Yeah.
We're working on it now. Okay, so how long does that take? 6 months or 3 months? I don't know, but like maybe 2 months from now, maybe in December there is a drop, And maybe that's conveniently after Modern Warfare 3 goes on sale and they drop some of these old games, or they drop, some not Call of Duty stuff, or whatever, right? But I think that there's a non-zero chance that, half of the explanation is what they've said, where the regulatory process was so long, we weren't able to collaborate the way we would have liked, whatever, whatever. Fine. I also think that you're probably right that on some level, they don't want to put out a bunch of old Call of Duty games or or Diablo 2 Resurrected or any of those kind of games when a new Call of Duty is about to come out and Diablo 4 is hopefully going to, sell more copies over the holiday season, like all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, right? Like you don't want to kneecap the new games with like, "Hey, all your old favorites are out. Come get your fill." Like so I think it's probably a little bit of both if I had to guess.
I think you're probably right. I do think with the backwards compatibility stuff, it's important to note that during the last backwards compatibility drop we got in 2021, they said that was it. They couldn't do any more because of technical or licensing reasons. Obviously, now they've just bought a shit ton of games,
Look
so
how many licenses we just acquired.
it's it's like we can now go and do that. So the backwards compatibility team, let's get the lads back together. Come on, the troops are in the trenches. We're gonna
Spider-Man Web of Shadows, baby! Shattered Dimensions, let's go! Give me some of these ABK Spider-Man
mm,
games. Let's
we're
fucking go, gang. Are
gonna
you
dig
kidding me?
deep into that code and find some gems and some
What do you
spaghetti.
think? What do you think the legality is on something like that? You think Marvel games can just go like if Xbox comes to them and is like, "Look, we want to, throw some of these old Spider-Man games on Game Pass." Can Marvel Games just be like, "Yeah, sure." Or is there a conflict of interest there with Sony?
I don't think so. I don't think
How
they
I
have
don't
any
I don't
right
know how
to.
that works. I
My
don't
guess
know.
would yeah, my guess is it goes down to the agreement that they had in place as to
Yeah.
whether it's for that game and whatever platform we want to put it on. We bought that game and we're just going to publish it wherever we want, or whether we bought that game and we're going to publish it specifically on these platforms. I would guess, though, judging from some of the other Activision games that have been re-released over the years, that their agreements are we can do whatever the fuck we want with it. I look at Toy Story 2, for example, that keeps getting trotted out time and time again over on Sony's platforms, and they've re-released it on um, PSP, PS Vita, PS3, PS4, and now PS5. And there's been no issues from Disney. There's been no issues from TT Games. They just are able to just publish it wherever they want.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. I guess the reason I'm wondering is like, because you imagine, right, that when Marvel Games and Sony signed their deal for Insomniac's Spider-Man games and then the Wolverine game, right? That like they probably signed a deal for like a certain number of games or something like that, or like, hey, we're going to license it to you for X number of years or something like that. Because that's like what it was with Activision is to my understanding is that like they had the Marvel license for a certain number of years.
That's what it
Um
was with EA as
or
well.
Spider-Man at
Star
least.
Wars stuff, right? Like the
Yeah,
Star Wars
right.
shit, it was you've got it
They had like a 10-year
exclusivity for this
exclusive
point.
deal.
Yeah.
So like
And they
I
put out
could
like 2 games in that period. It was ridiculous.
yeah. So like I could see it being something like that. Where yeah, I'm trying to see, like yeah, okay, so it doesn't look like they had a totally exclusive license, but it looks like they had X-Men and Spider-Man at the very least. Um, because there's a couple, I don't know, there's a couple that are, like, all over the place, but they were working with them for a long time. So, I guess that would probably only cover new games, though. So, like, the idea that they could potentially, like, bring some of these old Marvel games to Game Pass, I guess is, like, they're old games, right? Like, it's not like the rules for that must be different for licensing an old licensed game versus because the Toy Story thing you bring up is interesting, but it's like I could see you going to Disney Interactive and being like, "We want to put this," and they're like, "Yeah, whatever. Here's a licensing fee. Like, who gives a shit?" It's like
Yeah, I
they're
know,
not they're
but are
not
you gonna
making new
bother?
Toy Story games, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
no competition there. Whereas, like, I wonder if in their deal with PlayStation, they were like, hey, we're not like, we will not release any Spider-Man games anywhere else for X amount of, I don't know, right? I don't know how ironclad of a deal that they would have written up.
I mean, I think of the 007 stuff as well, right? How much of an issue GoldenEye was to re-release because you had Dan Jack that owned the rights to James Bond. You had Nintendo and Rare that originally published the game, but now Microsoft owns Rare. Activision did the remake of GoldenEye 007. Are we going to see that come to Xbox at some point, or because that was exclusive to the Wii at one point, I believe, and then it got re-released with GoldenEye 007
I guess
Reloaded
they
on the
could. They own
360?
they own Rare, and so it's like as long
Yeah.
as who the folks that own 007 signed off, I don't see why not.
Do they resurrect the original Destiny? Can they do that? They're just like,
They
"Hey,
probably could.
Sony, we know you bought Bungie, but we bought the publisher of the game instead, so we're just gonna revive these servers."
I feel like legally, no, wait, no, I don't think so. I think when Bungie left, they own Destiny.
That
I
would be
think
my guess, yeah.
that was part of the breakup. So yeah, no, they couldn't do that. I was gonna be like, yeah, maybe, but like, I
Yeah.
don't think so. But
Do you know who else they own? Which is one I really fucking hope comes to fruition, which is Radical Entertainment, and they developed, one of my favorite games of all time, Simpsons Hit and Run. So,
oh,
I really hope that that game gets a backwards
give us a
compatibility.
fucking remake. Forget backwards compat. Give us a remake of Hit and Run. That would sell like hotcakes, man. You gotta imagine that's one of the top emulated games, right? Like,
Yeah, it has to be, yeah.
yeah, you
After
know it.
that, they did a bunch of games for, like, Ubisoft and Vivendi, and then Activision bought them, and yeah, it's weird,
What
but
have they been
that's
doing
again,
since?
they were a support team for Destiny, and since
Oh,
then it's
great.
been
Call of Duty.
unknown. Yeah.
Call of Duty, I'm
Probably
sure.
Call of Duty, yeah, but in 2007, apparently Simpsons Hit and Run 2 was canceled when they got bought by Activision.
So dumb. That's so dumb. Oh my god. They hate money. They hate diversity of portfolio. All right, so okay. Here's we're gonna wrap up the ABK conversation, but I've got a few more bits I wanna throw at you. But before we do that, I'm gonna remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of October. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Pilkey, Sanakago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go and check out some of those sister shows, if you want to write into the show, just like some folks did for our question block today, if we get to it, if you want to go above and beyond and show your support, just like our Patreon producers did, you can head to one place, Jack. That's flipscreen.games. That is our website where you can find links to all that and much more. However, you want to show your support or get involved in the community, go click on that website and click on some stuff, and it'll help us out a lot. However, you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning in. All right, Steve. So here's my question, and it's a three-part question.
Okay.
You
Who are
give
you,
me,
Asobi?
yeah, I'm biting on Asobi's patented three question
Maybe
format.
you license that patent. Asobi, tell us what your licensing fee is, and we will write and we will get that over to you for Pete using your patent here.
Yeah, please let us know, and I will happily pay that fee if need be. So so here's the game. I have two questions that
Mhm.
I'm gonna ask you to answer, and then the third one we'll tackle together. Okay.
Okay.
Number one, who do we believe here? Number two, when are we actually going to see Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass? And then when they do come, let's come up with our list of 20 that kick it off because Bethesda brought 20 games to the table.
It's gonna be more than 20.
We're going to come up with 20 games. Maybe it will be, but we're going to come up with 20 games for the table. How's that sound?
And it sounds good. You know, when they brought the backwards compatibility stuff and the last batch? Do you know how many they brought?
Ooh, I don't.
76.
Ooh, why? Yeah, you think it's gonna be that much day one? Come
Qu
on.
Yeah, quite
You
possibly. I
think?
mean, you're running them in an emulator, so all you're doing is you're patching them to make them work better, giving
Yeah.
licenses to them in the back end. Theoretically, a lot of these should probably already work out of the box. It's just testing them with QA, finessing them, making sure that they run really, really well.
Okay. All right. I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at. So
I believe Phil, though,
you believe Phil.
100%. Yeah,
So
and I
so
think
give me a date. Plant your
so I
flag.
I checked out the date of when the Xbox Bethesda Developer Direct was this year.
Yeah.
I think I could see a drop on that date, which was January 25th this year. Around that time, end of January 2024, you do an announcement. It's like, here's some games that are coming in 2024, and surprise, we got the surprise of Hi-Fi Rush this year. Surprise, Activision Blizzard games are now available on Game Pass.
I could see that. And I could see, I mean, maybe this is us prognosticating too much, but like that could be where you announce that Sarah Bond's taking over too, right?
I think you kinda need to do that ahead of then, because Bobby's at the door on the 1st of January.
Could have an interim CEO though.
Yeah, or just no one there, it doesn't really matter. Phil could just be there day to day looking at seeing
Yeah.
what's going on.
He's acting CEO until
I
the
mean,
end of the month.
you technically don't need a CEO. It's not a set individual company. It's included as
That's
in
true.
Xbox now.
Hmm. All right. Okay. All right. I like that. I like that. I think I'm with you. I think near mid to end of January seems right to me, based on what we've heard here. So, all right, let's come up with our list of 20 games now. I've got a list of their games and of all three, right? Of Activision, Blizzard, and King. Um, I think it's probably safe to say that King will like not necessarily have much come. I think like maybe I don't know if there's a console version of Candy Crush.
There is a PC version of Candy Crush. I know
Okay.
that for sure. It gets pre-installed with every version of Windows 11, and it's a pain in
Right,
the
right,
ass
right, right.
to install it. So I could see them including that, and now you get Candy Crush for free.
Sure.
Um, but I could also see them eventually wanting to make a mobile play like Netflix has, where you download these games and you can sign them with your Xbox account, and it gets rid of the ads, and maybe you get some gems or whatever the fuck the currency is in these horrible little mobile games. Um, sorry, King, I really don't like them. But yeah, I think you can probably discount any of those games from our top 20 list because I don't think any of us care about them.
Yeah, and I think they're not really console games, right? Like it's like it makes sense that like maybe when the inevitable, Game Pass like mobile play happens, then sure. But until then I wouldn't worry about it.
Mhm.
Um so some of the ones that I thought made sense were I think I could easily see Call of Duty Modern Warfare, like 1 through 3, like, some of the
The new one?
classic. No, like the original.
Okay. I think the new
Um,
one comes.
maybe. I'm more thinking about the retro stuff, but, like, I guess that could be the case at that point because it is like, "Hey, like, these are out now. We're gonna just open the floodgates." If it is more than 20 and it is like that 70 or some odd number like you said, maybe that's the case and it is a mix of old and new stuff. I'm mostly thinking old stuff for the initial wave for me. That's
Okay,
what
see,
that's how I came at it.
I kind of feel like they do the same strategy they do with their first party games currently, where you bring these games and the DLC is paid for. That's what they're doing with Starfield, right? You can upgrade to the deluxe
Yeah,
version. I think you can even do that with Diablo 4, the next expansion, the next season, you've got to
sure.
pay for that. But, Diablo 4 would have been out almost a year by that point, like
Yeah,
6.
that's not crazy. I could see that for sure. I think with the OG Modern Warfares, that to me ties back to the Jez thing that he mentioned, where like
I'd want all of the Call of Duties, like Black Ops,
I'm
we'll get
sure
the zombies modes, all of that
I'm
bullshit.
sure they will, but I don't know that they're all gonna come at once. Like I think the Bethesda stuff kind of came in waves, and then it was like, okay, the whole library is here, but
Mhm.
like they did do like 2 or 3 updates, I feel like, so like
But I wonder if that was because it was day one, the backwards compatibility team, we got these ones done.
Yeah, maybe, but I think to that point though, if they
It's like
have
we
to
can get
do
these ones
that,
done by January, and then we're gonna do the
yeah,
next
like,
wave in June for the another Xbox event.
and I also think if you release every single Call of Duty at the same time, it has less impact, right? Like if you put out
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 1, right? Everyone's going to go jump on that versus okay, 1 through 3 is available. Okay, well then you've got an audience split among a bunch of them, right?
Mhm.
Whereas like if you do, hey, Modern Warfare 1's coming and then a couple of months later Modern Warfare's 2 and you just, you kind of re-release them on Game Pass or whatever, um I think that could work. That could be an event, that you're building around with the Call of Duty community. But I also had Diablo. I think Diablo 2 Resurrected feels like a lock. I could see Diablo 4 on that list as well, maybe even Diablo 3. But
Yeah, get them all on there, you know?
right.
Yeah, might as well.
But and again, I think all of them will come eventually. It's just like what's their day and date, right? Is more my question. Um So then I definitely think you see the Crash Insane trilogy. I think you see the Spyro Reignited trilogy. I think you see Tony Hawk 1 and 2. I
Do we
think
see, like, yeah, the Crash Team Racer or whatever
probably,
it is? Yeah.
right? Like that makes sense. Why wouldn't you have it? I could even see Crash 4, right? Like
Yeah,
on
I
that
think they
list.
want more family games on Game Pass. That's been a big,
Yeah.
big problem for
They
them,
don't
so
have a
why
kart racer.
not?
Why wouldn't you want to put Crash Team
Yeah.
Racing on that short list? You know?
Yeah, I could see that. You've got Sekiro on the list, I think that makes sense.
Sekiro, I feel
Get
like is you
something.
definitely want that, right?
You
Like
get
having a
that.
From Soft game on there is
Yeah,
like, come on, that's
and
yeah, you definitely want that.
do the work with frame rate boost and all of that stuff that you
Yeah.
do, and, like,
It'll
get it
feel like a
running
new fucking game to all the
super
people that
well.
just bought Elden Ring for the first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that'll be a nice one to get. I
So what's
think
that
World of
put us
War
at? What's that put us at? So say we get at least one Call of Duty.
1 Diablo.
I do you think it's just one?
No, I don't. I think it's all of them. I
Day
don't
one.
think they hold back. I think it's basically a big "F you" to Sony. It's like, "We got this still through, and we're gonna chuck all of this
But you
stuff
don't
on
you
there
don't think
now."
that they want to parse that out a little bit and have it be like, here's another batch, here's another batch. I think they want to control it a little bit.
I don't know because we don't know what's in the pipeline. Do they need to control a backwards compatibility when you've potentially got a new Call of Duty next year? You do put all the old ones out in January, and you're like, "And also, later this year, Modern Warfare 3 is coming."
Well, no, Modern Warfare 3 is the one that's coming out this year. That's
Alright,
coming
Modern
out,
Warfare 4 or
sure,
whatever the
or
next one's
whatever.
gonna be, Infinite Warfare.
Maybe, but we don't even know if they're gonna do that, right? Like we like Phil mentioned reevaluating that system at some point, and it's like, does that happen this year? Does that happen next year? I don't know, but it's like that could be a way that you do that. That could be a way that you mitigate. Like, hey, Call of Duty's not going to come out every year anymore, but we're
But
re-releasing
it
old
but they've
games on
already
Game
worked on
Pass
it.
and bringing
It's yeah.
servers back. We're putting new content out in Warzone, too, right? Like the Call of
I don't
Duty
think
is
you need a new Call of Duty every year, to be
no,
honest.
you
Like,
don't, and
Warzone
it
exists.
can still be monolithic and ever present. And I think you can leverage nostalgia for those old games, like Jez said, where they brought back those Xbox 360 servers and people were like flocking to it. Like I think that there is an ability to remarket nostalgia and package some of those old games together and be like, whatever, right? Like do like the Master Chief collection thing. And like
I agree with that, but I don't know, I don't think you need to drip feed it. Like I said, I don't think we know what's in the pipeline. I think the pipeline for Activision's probably already set for at least the next 2 years, that we know they've gotta hit these dates in order to make. They've probably already got deals with Sony in place that they're gonna get this game out, etcetera, etcetera. Um, I think I would add World of Warcraft to the list, that you get the base game and you get a subscription on that included in
mm,
Game Pass, and then and expansions, you buy them, and you've got a subscription ongoing with PC Game Pass
you
or Game
think
Pass Ultimate.
built-in
Yeah,
subscription.
yeah.
I don't
Why
know
not?
about that.
You're already buying other stuff for the game anyway, you know?
Yeah, but like hold on.
Like,
Let
ESO is
me do
free
some
to
research
play at
before
the
I speak out of
beginning.
turn. I'm sorry, what? One more time?
ESO is free at the like, when you start playing, and you start paying for it after a certain period of time. that kind of forced World of Warcraft's hand. You can play up to level 20, I think, now for free.
Okay.
Why not just extend that, but you pay to unlock the new content, you pay to buy the expansions because you have to pay to buy those anyway with an ongoing World of Warcraft subscription.
So on BattleNet, you can do for a year of World of Warcraft, it's $78 basically. Um,
Yeah,
for
what a
one
coup for Game Pass Ultimate.
for 1 month, it's $15 a month. For 3 months, it's $14 a month. For 6, it's 13. So, like, I have a hard time imagining that they are gonna give you a full subscription to those, when that subscription costs more than Game Pass.
Yeah, that subscription should not cost more than Game Pass.
No, but it has to, because, like, I mean, again, I might be speaking out of turn. What's the active player base on that game now?
I
Like,
have no clue, but I know a lot of people left.
okay, based on MMOpopulations.com, so grain of salt, daily player count of World of Warcraft is estimated to be 1.2 million roughly, with a total player base of 130 million. So, how many of those players play all the time versus like they come back for certain times of the year when there's a new expansion, whatever, whatever. Um, that it has to be expensive to keep going, right? To like for them to continue to put money into development for it, it has to, cost what it costs. And like if you have a huge influx of players, then it doesn't have to cost as much. And that's a whole other conversation. But it's
Mhm.
like, I don't
But I'm
know.
saying you still pay for the expansions. The expansions can
Right.
they're like 30, $40 anyway. They might even be
Well,
more than that now.
let me ask you this. The one thing that they could do is they could do like WoW Classic.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, do a WoW
That could be
Classic
free.
server, yeah.
And if you want to play modern WoW, you have to add an expansion or
I'd
whatever,
love
or
that.
add a,
Bring back
or
the
maybe they
classic.
give you a discount. Maybe it's like it's $10 a month instead or something like that. I don't know, but
Oh, or you up the price of you do like a you do like a plan that comes with PC Game Pass and a World of Warcraft subscription for a reduced
yeah, for a
cost.
discount,
So it works out as like $20 or $25 instead of what it would be.
that could be something. That could definitely be something.
I just think that would be a big win for consumers. Whether it's a win for Microsoft or not, I don't know. I don't know.
I
I've
was
always
wondering about like
struggled
stuff like
with
Overwatch too, though. Like, do you think there'll be like an interaction with those where you get like free skins or like some of the stuff that like they've done with
the
like
cost of they did that thing
with Riot's games
yeah,
where
with
it's like you
Riot
got like
Games
in-game
where you get free
content,
shit.
with
Yeah.
like League, it's like you unlock every hero, right? Like I could see it with like, oh, you get all the cosmetics or something like that, or I don't know,
Yeah, so what yeah, well, I mean, why not?
or
Makes
like a
sense.
certain number of like loot boxes, something like that. I don't know.
I could see that with Diablo as well. You
Yeah,
get,
for
like,
sure.
special mounts and things.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good call. I'd be interested in seeing some more of the like classic stuff from Blizzard. Like, I think it would be really cool to see like the Warcraft trilogy come back, like the
They
OG
tried with that,
StarCraft.
didn't they? But it didn't go down well.
Yeah, but I mean, do it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
D2 Resurrected was great, right? Like you already make Vicarious Visions do it.
That you mean Blizzard Albany? They've been
No,
rebranded.
I don't. I think that could be cool. I would like to see them leverage some of that classic IP a little bit more. Prototype maybe was one I saw. It's like, oh yeah, Prototype. I remember Prototype. You remember Prototype?
Yeah, vaguely.
Could be a
Doesn't
thing.
really it's not really a game that I think everyone's been champing at the bit to play.
Probably not.
Yeah, I
and
think Sekiro would be such a win.
yeah, I mean, the crazy one would be if they could figure out a way to do Guitar Hero. That would be really cool. But it's like, I don't know what you do with that. Maybe you put out a new Guitar Hero and then you bring the old ones back and then you have a new controller that can work with the old games and you kind of you
That
figure
would
it
be
out that way.
nice. That's yeah, I don't know. I
It's
struggle with
tough.
that because like, how many of those plastic guitars went to landfill?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it was a thing once, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like they went to landfill because I feel like they flooded the market and then people got sick of it. And like if it was a thing that they had maintained interest in, then like, I don't know. Like it's tough. I think we're not in the same universe we were back then. Like I think streaming and everything is like such a big part of content now that like and it's hard to do
It's
that.
really difficult to stream licensed music.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, maybe you just can't bring it back now the way that it was a thing then, but I
Yeah,
struggle to buy that.
Beat Saber exists in the, streaming universe, and the
Right.
games and the songs they've got on there are really, really good that and people play them, they put out song packs all the time.
Yeah.
People are constantly streaming that game.
So yeah, I think you could figure it out. I really do. We'll see. But I think that's another obvious one, right? That like, where is Guitar Hero? There's got to be a future for that. That brand was so strong. I think people would come back for that, but who
They
knows?
tried in 2015, but since then it's been dead.
Yeah, and it had a lot of problems though. It's like I think
Mhm.
you do it right now. It's 10 years later almost. Like you could figure it out. Maybe we weren't nostalgic enough for it back then, and we are now.
And then we see Epic, they're like, "Harmonix, sorry we killed you. You're coming back. Get us a new rock band."
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think that was part of the problem too, right? It was like you
Yeah,
had two
massive.
games, so it's like not only are we flooding the market with Guitar Hero, there's also Rock Band. It's like, all right, shit, okay, it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, so I want to close things out with a question. We're going to pull this one from the question block. This one comes from one of our Patreon producers, Snackago, who wrote in and said, "So Xbox closed the Activision Blizzard deal. Phil did the thing. Now that it's all done and dusted, pending the actual closing and transfer of ownership, is this enough for Xbox to get out of that oh so familiar third place? Will we ever live in a world where Xbox is in first place? The console wars don't matter, but for the sake of the narrative, could it happen?"
No, I don't think it ever will, and I don't think, like you say, Zaid, it doesn't matter. I think, Xbox is no longer just about the box, it's about being a platform and moving forwards, that's what it will be. You can take your games wherever you are, whatever system you want to play them on. That's the goal. Is that you can play them there. You can play them on your PC because you can download them from the Xbox store. You can stream them on your phone, or you can play them on a little stick on your TV, or just with a TV app on your Samsung TV. It's like that's the future. That's where Microsoft sees it. And it was clear from the leaked FTC documents that the next box is going to have more cloud and more emphasis on the cloud and more emphasis on what we can do with that, and not just being this is just another box.
Yeah, at least theoretically, right? That's the plan. So I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I also disagree with your conclusion. I think, which I think is interesting. I think you're totally right about that being the future of Xbox. But to answer Zaid's question, will we ever live in a world where Xbox is in first place? I mean, I'd say never.
I
Um,
don't think first place in terms of console, but I think first place in terms of platform they could well be.
Yeah, and I get that's my point, right? Is that like first place in terms of console doesn't necessarily matter. It's like when
Mm.
they're in third place, period. Right? Like it's not just console sales. It's like they put out less games than the other two, and the games that they put out don't sell as well, in mass as the games that the other two put out. Historically, right?
Yeah,
Obviously
Starfield seemed to do pretty well this
did
year.
really well. Right. But Starfield is the new thing, right?
Yeah.
Not the normal, right? Halo didn't sell as well as The Last of Us, which doesn't sell as well as Zelda, right? Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, Xbox is, I think, a clear number three, no matter how you slice it. That's just the reality. And I think we've talked a lot about how what Phil is doing now is playing the super long game, right? And I think there is absolutely a universe where uh Xbox is number 2 or number 1 and Sony falls into third place because maybe we do eventually hit a point where consoles are less dominant and Xbox has been preparing for a console's future, and Sony's been playing catch up. And then in the same way that for the last several generations, right, the last two at least, it's felt like Xbox has been chasing PlayStation. We could see that shift just like we saw
I feel
in
like that shift is already being seen, like, they're playing catch up with the cloud streaming, they're playing catch up with PlayStation Plus aping what Game Pass is doing to some
Mhm.
extent. They're playing catch up on the PC side of things. Yeah, they're ahead in terms of console sales and selling console boxed copies of games or even digital downloads, but they're playing catch up in other places, and I think they'll continue to do so for a while.
And I think what's interesting about that though is they're playing catch up right now in a game that no one else is playing. right? So like it
I mean,
no
Nvidia's
disrespect.
playing it, and
Yeah, but fuck
Nvidia
that.
could
Come on.
but I
Like,
really think Nvidia could then say, "Hey, Nintendo, you want this cloud stuff that we've been working on? We've got this great partnership
yeah,
with you.
maybe,
Why not stream some games to your Switch?"
maybe, that's you could be right, but the point I was driving to is like right now that isn't the winning game, right? Like Xbox isn't doing this because it's the most profitable thing. It's because they've been behind and they've pivoted and that they're trying to build a new market and prepare themselves for a future where they're going to be in a stronger position to control the market, right? We know that. The thing is though, that hasn't panned out yet, right? Like they're sinking billions and billions and billions of dollars into the idea that eventually this is going to be the way that everybody plays. And that might be true, but it also might not be because the two other people, the market leaders, don't seem to think that that's necessarily the future of the industry. And
I think Jim Ryan did think that was the future of the industry. I know he's out of the door, but you look at his slides and the whole live services thing, bringing
mhm,
it to PC, the streaming stuff, the PlayStation Portal. I think all of that leads to you don't necessarily need a console to play a PlayStation game anymore, and I
yeah,
think that's where they're driving
and
towards.
I think you're right, but it's like, are they driving towards that thinking that that's the future next generation or that's the future like 3 generations from now? And like, that's a really important distinction. And it comes back to a lot of stuff that you and I talk about on this show a lot, where the viability of some of that technology for like a mass market is far away. There are parts of my country in like New
They're
York
still on
City.
AOL. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that too. But I mean, like in New York City, right? One of the biggest cities in the world, right? A place that most people would call a center of culture. You would assume has good internet. There are huge swaths of that city that have dog shit internet. There are huge swaths of, New Jersey, where I live, where the most densely populated state in America, where there is fantastic fiber optic internet and then garbage internet that you cannot even get online and play a video game. So it's like the idea that we're just a couple years away from everything being in the cloud and we're not there. And like,
So
let
the
alone when you
document.
start talking about other countries that are emerging markets or that are established markets, like places in South America where like a ton of people buy games, they don't have the internet infrastructure there in most countries
Mhm.
there, right? Like, and that's,
I think it's
it's
getting there. I really think we will get
5G
there.
is going to change things, but
Y But
where's
the
that though?
document, the FTC document that leaked was called Road to 2030. It's a
Yeah.
long time away, 7 years. A lot can change in 7 years. We're probably on 6G by 2030, and 5G will be like, "Oh, remember that? Remember gigabit speeds? That's
Yeah, but,
nothing."
like, again, but, like, everywhere? Because
No,
like
not everywhere, but I think at that point, the places that were on 3G are upgraded to 4G, the places that were on 4G are upgraded to 5G, the 5Gs are upgraded to 6G, and it kinda
yeah, no
trickles
doubt,
down.
but, like, again, 4G isn't good enough to do it in most places. Like, it's like, that's not and that's still not the reality for most people, right? Like,
Mhm.
5G, I remember when I was at my old job, I was working for a company that did, that worked in the mobile space. It's not important what they did. And I remember writing an article for them about how, oh yeah, 5G is going to be rolled out like everywhere by like 2020, and it's like, well, it's not, right? Like,
In
there
large
were,
part due to your government banning Huawei from operating in your country.
yeah, but point being, right? That's technology that we thought was going to be more readily
Mhm.
available 3 years ago, and it still isn't. And it's like,
Yeah,
I'm not saying
yeah,
that
I
in
mean
7 years it couldn't be different, but I'm also saying that I remember, and I'll put my old man hat on here. I remember coming out of the Xbox 360 PS3 generation and everyone saying, this is the last generation of consoles. There's no way we're going to have another generation of a box in your living room after the PS4 and the Xbox One. And guess what? We did, and it is, and like the impact of those devices has only gotten bigger, right? Like each generation of consoles sells more than the last generation, and
mhm.
more people get into the hobby, and more people buy more than one box. And I don't see a universe where these companies are interested in no longer selling these devices that make them money, right?
But they
Like,
don't make them money. Does
yeah,
not
but
make Microsoft money. That box
that's
loses them money.
that's Microsoft,
Yeah.
right? But
And
not
that's the company we're
Nintendo,
talking about, like that, and I think that
and it's
moves
not
them
PlayStation though, right?
forwards.
Until inflation kicked
But
in.
we know from the discussion on last week's episode that that console ain't making them money either anymore because the $499 bot model had just started becoming profitable.
Yeah, but
It's no
yeah,
longer
but
gonna be
they
profitable.
increased the price. What do you wanna bet that that was to
Not on the
maintain.
499 model. They
That's true,
increased it on the
that's true.
digital model, but they didn't increase it on the disc model, and I think that was in large part the reason we got the increase on the PlayStation Plus
It was,
subscriptions
totally.
was
It's to maintain
to
profitability,
maintain the
right?
profitability of the console because they
But
kind
even
of see it as
so
a mandatory thing.
even so, right? Even if say the 500's breaking even now or selling at a slight loss, that's been the model for most of making consoles. So like
Mhm.
that's fine, you know? And like with Nintendo, they make a profit on the Switch for at least a segment of the PlayStation's life cycle. And if inflation goes back down, which it will at some point, maybe not during the life cycle of the PS5, but that would then close that gap towards profitability again, right? So it's like the idea that the PS6 could be sold at a break even or at a profit or whatever. It's like that could very well be the case. And like, who's to say that we're ready? I I feel like there's a lot of prognosticating about moving away from consoles and everything being in the cloud and streaming games and all this stuff. And I feel like there is so to
I'm not
me,
even just talking about it being in the cloud. Like Xbox's vision is you can play them anywhere, right? If
right?
Sony was like, "Yeah, come bring Game Pass to our console and you can download the games there," they do it right now.
Sure.
Ubisoft Plus and EA Player over there. I don't think Microsoft is dead set on streaming as the future. It is a subscription model is the future, and I would agree with them that a subscription model is probably the future. It's been the future for music. It's
I
been the
think it's at
future for
least a
movies.
future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I don't I think that that is a straw man argument. I really do. Um when you compare it to movies and music. And I think there's a part of me that thinks maybe I'm an old man and I'm naive
But
and
that's
I'm
the exact
too
model that Sony does at the moment, is the movie model that exists now. That new movies, they come out, they're either in the cinema for a while or you can rent them on iTunes or buy them or whatever, and then they come to a streaming service
right.
after further down the line. That's the same model that Sony follows at the moment. They bring out their game, they charge $70 for it, and then a year later, it comes to
Yeah, and
PC and it comes to a streaming
I'm
service.
with you that I think that's the future. Like that will definitely be a thing that's a part of I think at least their plays moving forward, and we'll see how who else does it or sticks around.
I mean, it
Um,
it may not be. The new CEO might come in and be like, "No, don't
but
like
but
this."
to me, like that's not the same thing, right? Because you bring up streaming with movies or music, that's now the de facto way to experience those mediums, right? Unless it's a new movie that you're going to go see in the theaters, which less and less people do. Or you're like a super fan and you buy an album, right? Which almost no one does. That's the de facto way to get like, oh, this band I like put out a new song, better jump over to Spotify, right? Like that's how people do that. And I think the idea that video games are definitely going to go that way, I think is iffy because I think that the cost of making video games and how long it takes to make them is a lot different than those other industries. And
Is it? Like, how much does a Marvel movie cost to make?
I mean, let's find out, right?
It's
A lot,
gotta be it's
a
gotta
lot.
be, like, in the hundreds of millions of dollars in the same way that The Last of Us was.
I think the average cost of them is somewhere in the neighborhood of like half a million dollars,
Ha
maybe.
half a billion, you mean?
Sorry, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I meant, like 500.
Yeah, which I think is what you need to look at with the streaming platforms and with games, is that you'll have those blockbusters,
Okay,
and they'll be few and far between.
so so just to give to correct myself. So Avengers Endgame, which has to be probably the most expensive movie they've made
Mhm.
because obviously huge effects budget and everything, but it also has like all of the stars in it. So like that you would imagine is the most expensive. The budget was 356 to 400 million for their most expensive movie. So like the standard ones are probably,
You're probably looking
quite a
at
bit less.
100 million.
Yeah, right. Um, so like you think about that though, right? Like those movies, the model is like what you said with Sony. Because those are movies that people see in the theaters and they make blockbuster amounts of money, right? Like
Yeah.
those movies make $1 billion at the box office or more, right? That one I just
Yeah, and
mentioned
that's
made
not
two
coming to
plus
Disney
billion.
Plus. That's not coming to Disney Plus like the same day it comes out in the cinema.
Right,
And that's the
exactly.
kind of same model that I think is probably the future. And I could easily see Microsoft maybe adjusting the games coming day and
Maybe,
date
but it's like
at
I
some
don't see
point.
Nintendo doing that. Do you? Because we've talked a million times about how a big part of the way that Nintendo is sitting on a fucking dragon's hoard of gold is because they sell games for $60 5 years after they come out.
Subscriptions is a huge part of their business, though.
Yeah.
I think NSO is a big part of their business. It will continue to be so. And I think if they can add
That's not the
streaming
same thing though.
if they can add streaming to the mix, I think it is the same thing. It becomes what PlayStation Plus became. It's like you now get streaming on NSO. I think people see streaming as convenience. If you take the fact that it's a subscription thing out of it, people were streaming stuff before the subscription services existed. You were renting movies on iTunes or you were buying music there and you were just playing it. That was being streamed from the cloud. The delivery method of streaming, I think, is what people really like. It's that instant, I click
Yeah.
play and I'm
No,
playing the
and
game.
that's the other thing I was gonna say is like that's another sticking point with games, which is like it's not as easy to do that and have it be a seamless experience because the vast majority of people do not recognize when music or video is high quality or really truly high fidelity, right? Most people pay for 4K streaming on a device that is not actually capable of outputting what they're paying for.
Mhm.
Most people listen to music at a bit rate that I personally find unlistenable. And I think is insane that people listen to music that way. But that's how people listen to music. Gamers are way more. We have had how many stories this year where it was a controversy that a game didn't run at 60 FPS?
How
And
many
then
of
when you
those
talk
people
in,
are the mainstream, though? How many of those people are the
I
same
mean,
people that play EAFC or Call of Duty?
yeah,
And do
fair
they
enough.
care?
But like,
Like, it's gonna look high fidelity. It's just the resolution that might be output. It might be outputting at 1080p instead of 4K,
yeah,
and
but
it's the
like,
sharpness, and
but where's that line?
I don't think
Like,
most people can tell the difference, I really don't, and I also think a large part of people are just gonna play on their phone, people are playing Fortnite on their
sure.
phone, people are playing Genshin Impact on their phone.
So,
It's
but here's the
become
thing.
something that they're
What you're
used to.
talking about though is exactly my point. Is I think that this type of service is definitely part of the future of gaming. But the idea that it will become the ubiquitous way that you interact with video games in the way that almost nobody buys albums anymore or CDs or whatever, right? Like I don't think we're going to get to a point where almost no one buys video games. I just don't. And maybe eventually, but I think it could be generations away. Just because like the idea that we're only 10 years away or 7 years away from a universe where most people have good enough internet and are happy to pay a subscription fee rather than owning a game outright. I don't know, man. Because like the other thing
I
is like,
think most Xbox players are willing to pay a subscription fee that own a game outright. I haven't bought an Xbox game this whole
yeah,
generation.
but again, but think about that. Think about that in like a different context, right? Because you and I are multi-platform gamers, right? We own multiple devices and we play things where we want to play them. And it's like, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm not buying most of Xbox's first party games. But like, we had that conversation of like, oh, does it make sense though? Like, should you just buy Starfield because the game is so many hours and it's like you're gonna spend more streaming it on Game Pass than you would just owning it if you're gonna play it more than once or you're gonna play it for like however many 100 hours, and you're not going to do it in the span of a week or two. And
Yeah,
it's
or if
like,
you're not gonna play other games on the service, but, with
right.
all of the Activision Blizzard stuff coming, with the fact that there are,
But that's
with
Game Pass. That's not every.
yes.
This is the whole thing, right? Like, again, I think Game Pass here to stay. I think versions of this idea here to stay. But like getting to a point where okay, I don't buy video games anymore, and I have a subscription to Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and Nintendo's thing and this and that, the same way that we now have Netflix and Disney Plus. And
Mhm.
I don't think it's gonna happen in that way. I really don't. And I think Like we've talked about it with like Ubisoft and EA and some of these other companies. I
They're
don't
the
think that
only other ones.
they don't have
They're the only
compelling
other
enough
ones.
libraries to justify the price. Xbox does.
If they can do the backwards compatibility stuff in the same way that Microsoft is planning with Activision, yeah, they can. Like, I really think the backwards compatibility library of Ubisoft, so I can go play Pod on my PC that I've wanted to
You're
play
paying $15
forever,
a month
you
for
know?
that?
In and out, I don't think anyone pays for these subscriptions continuously anymore, and I think these companies know that, and that's why they're upping the cost. And I think that's fine. Like, I think
It to me,
there's probably different
that shows that
models.
the bubble's bursting.
The
Is
bubbles bursting maybe on subscriptions, and I don't necessarily think that, like, I think there's 2 different things. There's the streaming where people see it as a subscription, there's streaming where it's a service. Xbox wants to be the platform where you stream your games from. I think you'll be able to buy games and also have Game Pass. If I just wanna play EAFC, and that's all I wanna play, and I wanna play it for a few months, why would I not just subscribe to EA Plus, play, EA Play, and play EAFC with my friends? I don't care that I don't own the game because guess what? It's going to come out again next year, and I'm going to have to
yeah.
play. I'm going to buy the game again. Like, why not subscribe to something
I
like
think
that,
you're right.
especially if that's your game?
I think there are use cases where that kind of behavior makes sense. But that's to me, that's a different argument than the future of gaming is streaming in the way that the future of music has become streaming, right? The music industry has been totally upended and devastated by streaming, right? Whereas like I don't see game publishers and developers rushing to that model. I really don't. Because like video games are one of the few art forms where people buy copies of things. Like
For now,
something like Grand Theft Auto 5 does not become the success it is if you can play it for free on Game Pass.
I think GTA 6 Online is a free to play game. I don't think you pay
I
for it.
no, I think you're right. But that's then it's
That's what
not
people are buying it for. No one's playing
you're right,
GTA the
but my
story
whole point
anymore.
is I mean,
We're
here's
buying
I
the
don't know,
same
man.
game to play online.
Maybe it won't be free though, because think about that. Like you're right, that is what people are buying it for, and people are still buying it for
Yeah, but
60 fucking dollars
how much are
now.
those shark cards costing? It's like they're just printing money.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you do it twice?
Yeah?
Like it's
I think
like
you pay for the story and you get that free, and then eventually they make it free. That's what they did with Red Dead 2. You had
yeah,
Red Dead 2, and then the online component became like a free to play thing.
I think you're probably right. But it's like, dude, I mean, that game's been selling at full price since I was in college.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, but that's a phenomenon. It doesn't happen with other things.
I
That and Nintendo games are the
Yeah, but
only
it's
2.
like but that's a model though, man. Like it's like that
But
is
it
a
can only be a model if you've got the product. You know,
yeah.
because no one's buying a Ubisoft game full price. Literally nobody. If you're buying a Ubisoft game full price, you're doing something wrong. Like, you should be buying that game when it's like $10.
I mean,
And that's a
but
problem. That's a problem for Ubisoft to solve. Like, their games aren't seen as premium, and people wait for them to go on sale. You
sure.
can become a premium product. GTA is a premium product because they are so rare. They come few and far between at this point. Like, we've been waiting forever for one. People will drop probably $80 on day one if they can play it early.
Yeah,
Like, they will pay for early access for that game because they're
sure.
excited for it, in the same way that we've waited for Tears of the Kingdom since Breath of the Wild, and that's why people were willing to pay $70 for it. And we were like, well, is this the norm moving forward? No, we just think people will pay $70 for this game. So that's
Yeah.
what we're going to charge.
But then I guess that's the thing is I think when we live in a universe where developers are spending more time and more money to make these games, like I don't see them being like, yeah, yeah, no, it's cool if you just give us $15 a month and then you just get our game for nothing. I just
I'm not saying that they get it for nothing day and date, though. Like, the model is you can buy it, you can play it now, and you can play it for maybe the first year. That seems to be Sony's model, right? That you get
yeah.
it for a year, then it comes to
Well,
PS Plus, or it
maybe it
comes to
comes.
PC, or maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah, like
Who knows with them? Who knows what their pricing model's all about on
yeah,
PC? They're just a weird company. But I think that's probably the model. You look at what the movie industry does. And you can pay on Disney Plus. At least you could during the pandemic to pay a
right.
premium to play those movies at home. And I think you can probably pay a premium to play those games
And I mean,
early
you
before
see
they
that
come to
with
the streaming service.
certain products too, right? Where it'll be like, oh, it's out and it's on Amazon if you want to watch it, but then later it comes to Netflix bought the rights a year later or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Now you can stream it there, um, that kind of thing, or Peacock, right, or something like that. They do that kind of shit too.
We
Um,
don't have Peacock here, and then The Office disappeared from everywhere, and we were like, "How do we watch this anymore?" Because like, you took it off of Netflix, and it's like, but we
and
didn't bring Peacock over, so it's like, what's the
and there's
deal?
the other and there's the other thing that I was gonna point out is, like, I think that that's another problem, which is that
It's not if you own the IP. Like, if you own Activision, you are
yeah,
the
for sure.
company that owns it, it's a problem for Netflix because they didn't own anything, and that's why Disney Plus was able to run away with Marvel and Star
Totally.
Wars and go start their own thing. But these companies
Please,
and the
not
big
even just that, like, yeah, those 2 things are big, but also, like
we
like,
also bought Fox.
yeah, it's like 50% they have The Simpsons, they have, like, 50% of the IP you've ever heard of is on Disney Plus, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, especially outside of the US, all the Hulu
Yeah.
stuff's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, which is, like, that's, like, even more, you know? It's, like, an insane amount of shit.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, you know, it's like I'm with you. Like I definitely think like streaming services are here to stay and they're gonna continue to evolve and everything. But um I don't know. I think I really do think we're a long way away from the traditional model of consoles and like the stuff that we're used to going away. I really do. I don't think there's any evidence to support that the traditional model is at all in crisis, you know? Um Consoles and games cost more than they used to and they're still selling better, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the next console comes out, I think the next generation is, I think, gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna depend on what Xbox does and what Sony does, because there was some interesting stuff in those FTC documents because, it's like merging with the cloud, potentially switching to ARM instead of x86, which has its own things, and whether Sony just does more of the same but more powerful, or if they diversify and do some of the stuff that Microsoft was talking about.
Yeah. And then again, like how audiences respond to that. Because you think about the last time that Xbox tried to be like, we're going to do something different. And everybody dunked on them and then was like, absolutely not. And then
They've got a lot more, street cred these days, I think, and a
you're
lot,
right. But you can't say that because when they tried to do that, it was coming off of the 360, which is when they were the top motherfucking dog.
yeah. Yeah, but the fucking Connect.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if they
Which
come
made
out,
sense, like, that was the best-selling accessory of all time.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. What they did, they thought what they did made sense, you know. But it's like, here's the thing: if the next box comes out, and they're like, it's cloud only, and it's this and it's that, and people are like, no, I want to own physical
I think it's
games,
gonna be
and
a
my
mix.
internet isn't good enough, and I have
Yeah.
caps. And think about that, Steve. Think about how long it takes you to download a fucking video game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that's why streaming is so compelling to me, because I wouldn't need to download the fucking thing.
Yeah, but then,
It's on someone else's
yeah, but
machine,
dude, but then
and you're just
anytime,
streaming a video signal.
that your internet is spotty, you can't play your games.
I can't play it anyway because it needs to connect and say that I've got Game Pass. I already have that situation.
That happens
And
on
any
Game
time
Pass if you're offline.
Game Pass and any, digital purchases, it needs to call home and say, "Do you own this?"
No.
Yeah.
Every time though, because I don't have to do that. I've played games offline that I own
I've had
digitally.
issues with it. I've had issues with it.
Really?
Mhm.
I'll have to look into that. I'm gonna have to look into the specifics of
Give
that.
it a go. Turn your internet off
No, I mean,
on
like,
your
I know
Xbox.
I've done that though, right? Like, I was
Yeah.
playing, you know, Final Fantasy once when my internet was out, and I that's downloaded. I don't have a physical copy of it.
Mm. Yeah, it's weird. I think
Huh.
there is gonna be some games that will require the cloud in the same way that there already is now. Flight Simulator requires the cloud.
Totally, totally. Interesting. Anyway,
And
we'll wrap it up there for today. You got to get going. So I will say this: we've had a question in the question block from one of our Patreon producers, Earth Visitor. I'd love to hear more about what you guys are playing. We're gonna do it next week. We've heard the call. We're gonna find a way to get more what we're playing segments back on the air. So that is our promise to you. It might take a few weeks for us to move things around and figure some stuff out. But hopefully next week we'll have a bit of a Q&A, a bit of what we're playing, and we'll kind of, we'll talk Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff. Um, but we hear you, Earth Visitor. Moving forward, we will do more what we're playing. So that's for you and everybody else who wants to hear about it.
I know Earth still listens to Nintendo Noise, so you'll have heard Max's account of Mario Wonder. If you're interested in buying that game, go see Nintendo Noise this week. Max played Mario Wonder and Prince of Persia EGX. and so he's got a bit of an account there. But we'll be talking about it next week with
Yeah, we'll have
Sierra
our
as well.
full review in progress, maybe a full review. We'll see how far we get in the game, but on Monday for Nintendo Noise. So you make sure you write in for that as well. So yeah, Spider-Man and Mario next week. Big week. It's going to be a good one. So make sure you tune in here and we'll be talking a lot about what we're playing for at least the next 2 weeks, I think. Hopefully that'll give you your fill. So, thank you guys for joining us here in another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. Remember, if you want to show your support, if you want to become a Patreon producer, if you want to write into the show, if you want to go check out our sister shows like Nintendo Noise, where you can hear Max talk all about Super Mario Wonder a few days before release, guess what? You can find links to all that and much more all in the same place. That is flipscreen.games. Head over there, check it out, click on some stuff. However you choose to get involved or show your support, it helps us out a lot. And we thank you oh so much for tuning in to another episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.